You want to know why I'm writing this? You want to know why I'm sitting in a Motel 62 towns over, shaking so bad I can barely hit the keys on this laptop? It's because I need someone to know. If I disappear, if the cops find my car abandoned on the side of Route 285 with the engine running and the door open, I need someone to know it wasn't a breakdown. It wasn't a robbery. And it definitely wasn't a suicide. It was the job. Let me back up. I'm not a superstitious guy. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't buy into the whole cryptid scene. And I definitely don't scroll through conspiracy forums at 3 in the morning. I'm a realist. I believe in rent. I believe in crippling student debt. And I believe in the fact that my bank account was sitting at -$40 last Tuesday. That's how they get you. Desperation. It blinds you to the red flags. It makes the impossible seem like a lucky break. I found the ad on a physical bulletin board at a laundromat in El Pozo. Not Craigslist, not Indeed. A piece of printer paper, yellowed from the sun, pinned up with a rusted thumbtack. Night shift clerk needed. Location, the Last Stop Gas and Grill. Hours, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Pay, $50 an hour. Cash, paid nightly, $50 an hour. I stared at that number for a long time. In West Texas, you can rent a decent house for a month on what you'd make in a week at that rate. I assumed it was a typo. Maybe they meant 15? Even 15 was good for a clerk job. I called the number. No interview. No background check. Just a gruff voice that sounded like it had been gargling gravel and cigarette ash for 30 years. He gave me coordinates. Not an address. Coordinates. He said, show up at 9:45. Don't be late. Come alone. I drove out there in my beat-up Civic. The drive started normal enough, passing the suburban sprawl, the strip malls, the endless car dealerships. But then the lights thinned out. The road turned from smooth asphalt to cracked pavement, and finally, to a long, straight stretch of 2-lane blacktop cutting through the heart of the desert. If you've never been to West Texas at night, you don't understand the darkness. It's not just an absence of light. It's a weight. The sky is so big it feels like it's going to crush you. There are no streetlights, just the cones of your headlights cutting through the dust and the tumbleweeds. I drove for an hour without seeing another car. My radio signal died about 40 minutes in, fading into static that sounded uncomfortably like whispering if you listened too hard. I turned it off. Then I saw it. A beacon in the void. The last stop. It looked like something out of a time capsule from the 70s. A flat roof, 2 pumps that looked like they hadn't been updated since the Bush administration, and a flickering neon sign that buzzed loud enough to hear from the road. The G in gas was burnt out, so it just said AS Station. I pulled in. The place was desolate. The silence out here is heavy. It rings in your ears. The man inside was exactly what I expected. Older guy, skin like leather, wearing a trucker hat that shadowed his eyes. He didn't smile when I walked in. He didn't even look at me. He was shoving cash into a duffel bag behind the counter. "You're the new guy," he grunted. "Yeah," I said. "I'm Alex." He didn't shake my hand. He just threw a set of keys on the counter. They landed with a heavy clatter. "Here's the deal, Alex," he said, and for the first time, he looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, rimmed with dark circles so deep they looked like bruises. He looked terrified. "You stay behind the glass. You stock the shelves when it's quiet. You sweep the floors. But mostly, you stay behind the glass." I looked at the partition. It was heavy-duty plexiglass, the kind you see in banks or liquor stores in rough neighborhoods. It went all the way to the ceiling. "Is it dangerous out here?" I asked. "Robberies?" He let out a short, dry laugh. "Robberies. Kid, if a robber comes in here, you give him whatever he wants and you thank God that's all it is." He grabbed his bag and headed for the door. He was moving fast. Too fast. Like he was escaping a burning building. "Wait," I said. "What about the register?" "How do I?" "There's a note," he interrupted. Hand on the door handle. "Read the note. Follow the note. Do not deviate from the note." And then he was gone. I watched his taillights fade into the darkness faster than I thought his old truck could move. So there I was, alone. 10 p.m. The hum of the refrigerator units was the only sound. I walked around the counter. It smelled like stale coffee and industrial cleaner. I found the note taped next to the register. It wasn't an employee handbook. It was a single sheet of lined notebook paper, written in frantic, jagged handwriting. The ink was smeared in places, like the person writing it had sweaty hands. At the top, in all caps, underlined 3 times. The rules of the shift. Read immediately. I figured it was going to be stuff like don't smoke inside or count the till twice. I was wrong. I picked it up. My hands started to sweat just reading the first line. Rule number 1, keep the door locked between 12 a.m. and 3 a.m. No exceptions. If someone knocks, ignore them. If they scream for help, ignore them. If they look like your mother, your brother, or the police, ignore them. They are not who they say they are. Rule number 2, the Native Americans in this area talk about skinwalkers. We don't use that word here. It draws their attention. We call them the travelers. If you see a coyote standing on its hind legs by the air pump, turn off the outside lights immediately. Do not make eye contact. Do not take a picture. Just wait until it leaves. Rule number 3, there is a man who comes in around 1:15 a.m. He wears a tan trench coat and a wide-brimmed hat. He will ask for a pack of Marlboro Reds. We do not sell cigarettes. Tell him we are out. He will get angry. He will threaten you. He might even slam his fists against the glass. Do not give him anything. If you sell him tobacco, he will ask for a light. You do not want to be within reaching distance when he lights up. Rule number 4, if the phone rings, answer it. If there is static, hang up. If there is a voice reading a list of numbers, write them down and put the paper in the safe. If the voice sounds like you, hang up immediately and hide in the supply closet for 10 minutes. Rule number 5, do not look into the mirror in the bathroom after 2 a.m. Just trust me on this one. Rule number 6, sometimes the lights will go out. The generator takes exactly 60 seconds to kick in. During those 60 seconds, you are vulnerable. Keep a flashlight on your belt at all times. When the darkness hits, turn on your light and shine it directly at the floor. Do not look up at the ceiling. They hang from the rafters when it's dark. Rule number 7, if a car pulls up and the driver has no face, just a smooth patch of skin where features should be, duck below the counter. Stay there until you hear the engine drive away. Do not peek. They can smell fear, but they can't see through the counter. Rule number 8, you are paid $50 an hour for a reason. This is hazard pay. The hazard is not human. Rule number 9, dawn breaks at 6:13 a.m. Do not leave the building before the sun is fully visible over the horizon. The parking lot is not safe in the grey hours. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. The sound echoed in the empty store, sounding hollow and weak. I thought it was a prank. Hazing the new guy. Scary stories to keep me awake. I looked at the clock. 10:15 p.m. I crumpled the note and tossed it near the register. Nice try, old man, I muttered to myself. I started my shift. I stocked the sodas. I swept the dust off the linoleum. I scrolled through my phone, but the signal was dead. No Wi-Fi. Just me and the hum of the coolers. Around 11 p.m., a semi-truck pulled in. A normal guy got out. He bought a coffee and a beef stick. He didn't have a blurry face. He didn't ask for forbidden cigarettes. He just paid and left. See? I told myself. It's just a gas station. Just a boring, lonely job in the middle of nowhere. Then midnight rolled around. I was wiping down the counter when the temperature dropped. Not gradually. Instantly. It felt like someone had opened a freezer door right next to me. The condensation on the soda cans froze over. I could see my breath puffing out in white clouds. I looked at the thermostat. It still read 72 degrees. Then came the tapping. It was gentle at first. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the glass front door. I looked up. Standing there, just on the other side of the glass, was a woman. She was young, maybe early 20s. She was wearing a thin summer dress, way too light for the desert night. She was shivering violently. Her skin was pale, almost translucent under the flickering neon light. She looked at me, her eyes wide and pleading. "Please," she mouthed. I couldn't hear her through the thick glass, but her lips were easy to read. "Please let me in. My car broke down. It's so cold." My hand instinctively went to the button under the counter that buzzed the door open. It was a natural reaction, a human reaction. A girl is in trouble, you help her. My finger hovered over the button. Then I remembered the note. Rule number 1, keep the door locked between 12 a.m. and 3 a.m. If they scream for help, ignore them. I hesitated. I looked at the crumpled piece of paper by the register. The woman banged on the glass now. Harder. Help me, she screamed. I could hear it muffled through the door. He's coming. He's going to kill me. She looked over her shoulder into the darkness of the parking lot, terror written all over her face. She turned back to me, tears streaming down her cheeks. Please, open the door. I felt sick. My stomach churned. If this was real, if there was actually someone out there chasing her, and I did nothing, that's manslaughter. That's evil. I looked closer at her. Her tears. They were thick. Dark. They weren't clear. They were black. Like oil. She slammed her hand against the glass again. And this time, I saw it. Her fingers. They were too long. Just slightly. Too many joints. Like a spider's legs disguised as human digits. I pulled my hand back from the buzzer as if it were red hot. I took a step back. Her expression changed instantly. The fear vanished. The pleading vanished. Her face went slack, completely devoid of emotion. She stopped shivering. She leaned in close to the glass, her black eyes locking onto mine. She didn't blink. Then she smiled. It wasn't a human smile. It was too wide. It stretched too far back, exposing way too many teeth. Teeth that were sharp, jagged, and grey. Let me in, Alex, she whispered. I hadn't told her my name. I wasn't wearing a name tag. She tapped on the glass again. One long, sharp fingernail clicking against the barrier. Click, click, click. I know you're in there, Alex. I can smell your debt. I can smell your fear. I stumbled back, knocking over a display of chewing gum. She stood there for another minute, just smiling that impossible smile. Then, without turning around, she stepped backward into the darkness. She didn't walk away. She just faded. The shadows swallowed her whole. I stood there, hyperventilating, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I grabbed the note. I smoothed it out on the counter, reading it again, my hand shaking so hard I almost ripped the paper. Rule number 1. Real. God help me, rule number 1 was real. I looked at the clock. 12:15 a.m. I had 6 more hours. And then I heard it. From the back of the store, near the slushy machines. A low, guttural growl. I spun around. The store was empty, but the growl was inside. It was inside the building with me. I looked at the list. Rule number 6. They hang from the rafters when it's dark. The lights were still on. So what was that? I scanned the list frantically. There was nothing about growling inside the store while the lights were on. Wait. There was something written on the back of the note. I flipped it over. Scrawled in red ink, barely legible. If you hear it inside, it's too late to hide. Pray it's not hungry. And whatever you do, don't look at the ventilation ducts. Slowly, involuntarily, my eyes started to drift upward, toward the heavy metal grate of the air vent directly above my head. A single drop of thick, viscous slime dripped from the vent and landed on the counter right next to my hand. It sizzled, burning a hole through the laminated countertop. I stood perfectly still. I am writing this on my phone's notepad app right now, keeping my eyes fixed on the floor. I can hear breathing above me. It sounds wet. Heavy. I don't know if I'm going to make it to 6 a.m. But if you're reading this, and you see an ad for a gas station in West Texas paying $50 an hour, keep driving. Just keep driving. That was where the note on my phone ended, the screen cracking under the pressure of my thumb just as the heavy iron grate above me gave way with a shriek of tearing metal. I didn't look up. Rule 6 said don't look up, but I felt the displacement of air, a rush of rot and copper scent that hit me like a physical blow. I scrambled on hands and knees, my sneakers squeaking violently against the polished linoleum, launching myself toward the supply closet at the back of the store. I threw myself inside, slamming the heavy wooden door and twisting the deadbolt just as something wet and heavy slapped against the wood on the other side. The impact shook the frame, dusting my hair with plaster from the ceiling. I held my breath, pressing my back against the shelving unit, listening to the wet, slurping sounds of something testing the barrier. It sniffed, a long, deep inhalation that sounded like a clogged drain clearing. And then, slowly, the footsteps receded, wet slaps fading back toward the sales floor. I was safe. For now. I clicked on my flashlight, the beam cutting through the claustrophobic gloom of the closet. It was a tight squeeze, smelling of bleach and old mop water. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with industrial paper towels and jugs of mysterious blue liquid. But there was something else. Taped to the inside of the door, right at eye level, was a thick, laminated placard. It wasn't handwritten like the frantic note at the register. This was official. Corporate. It bore a logo I didn't recognize, a black circle with a jagged line cutting through it, and the header was printed in bold, Severe Helvetica. The last stop, Emergency Containment Procedures, for use during Class 4 breaches and above. My hand shook as I shone the light on the text. The old man hadn't mentioned a second list. The handwritten note hadn't mentioned this. I leaned in, my heart rate spiking as I read the calm, clinical instructions for a nightmare scenario. 1. Protocol for lockdown. You are currently in the designated safe zone. Do not attempt to leave the safe zone until the all-clear signal is given. The all-clear signal is the sound of a trumpet. If you hear a bell, a whistle, or your own voice telling you it is safe, remain in the safe zone. These are mimicry tactics. 2. The red phone. There is a red landline phone located on the bottom shelf behind the cleaning solvents. If it rings, answer it immediately. The caller will be management. Do not speak first. Listen to the breathing. If the breathing is rhythmic, ask for the supervisor. If the breathing is erratic, hang up and sever the phone cord from the wall. You have 30 seconds before the call is traced to your physical location. 3. Reality anchoring. You may notice the dimensions of the closet changing. The walls may appear to breathe, or the distance to the door may seem infinite. This is a hallucinogenic defense mechanism of the station. Do not panic. Close your eyes and recite your social security number backward. Remind yourself that you are real. Remind yourself that Texas is real. 4. The replacement. If you look down and notice you have an extra finger, or that your shadow is moving independently of your body, you have been marked for replacement. Locate the box of box cutters on the second shelf. Remove the extra digit immediately. The station cannot process biological anomalies that are not part of its inventory. 5. The customer in the chute. Occasionally, a man wearing a pristine charcoal chute will phase through the locked door. He will not attack you. He will offer you a contract to sign. He will promise to clear your debts. He will promise to make the fear go away. Do not look at his face. It is a cognito hazard. Politely decline his offer by saying, I am currently on the clock. He is legally bound to respect labor laws. 6. Termination. In the event that the door begins to splinter, or you hear the lock mechanism dissolving, open the small grey safe on the floor. The combination is 000. Inside is a standard issue firearm with a single round in the chamber. This is not for the entity outside. The entity is immune to ballistics. This is for you. It is the only way to deny them the feed. I stared at Rule 6, the beam of my flashlight trembling. I looked down at the floor. There, tucked behind a bucket of floor wax, was a small, grey metal safe. And then, the red phone on the bottom shelf began to ring. The humming of the refrigerator units got louder. It wasn't just a mechanical whir anymore. It was a syllable, repeated over and over in a low, resonant drone. Feed, feed, feed. I shook my head violently, trying to dislodge the sound from my ears. I dug my fingernails into my palms until the sharp pain grounded me. Ignore it. Focus on the laptop. Focus on the keys. Then, light. Real, physical light washed over the store, drowning out the sickly neon flicker. High beams. They cut through the darkness like physical blades, illuminating the swirling dust motes in the store's stale air. A vehicle was rolling into the lot. I squinted, my heart leaping into my throat. It wasn't a black truck. It wasn't a rusted sedan from the 1950s. It was a silver minivan. A Honda Odyssey, late model. The kind with stick figure family stickers on the back window. It looked so painfully normal, so suburban, that for a second, the breath rushed out of me in a gasp of relief. I forgot where I was. I forgot the endless desert and the impossible darkness. The van rolled to a stop at Pump 6. The engine purred, a soft, well-maintained idol. I stood up, adjusting my vest, a desperate hope clawing at my chest. A customer. A real customer. Maybe a family on a road trip, lost on the detour, needing directions to the interstate. I looked at the driver through the glass. The man behind the wheel was wearing a blue polo shirt. He had one hand draped casually over the steering wheel. As the car stopped, he turned his head toward the store. My relief shattered. Where his face should have been, eyes, nose, mouth, there was nothing. Just a smooth, concave expanse of pale, fleshy skin. It looked like uncooked dough mold into the shape of a head. Rule number 7. The words flashed in my mind like a warning beacon. If a car pulls up and the driver has no face, duck below the counter. Stay there until you hear the engine drive away. Do not peek. I dropped. I hit the floor hard, my knees cracking against the linoleum. I curled into a tight ball, shoving myself into the cramped, dust bunny-filled space between the safe and the trash can. I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing my hands over my ears. Stay down. Do not peek. Stay down. I waited. I could feel the vibration of the minivan's engine through the floor. It wasn't turning off. It was just idling. Purr, purr, purr. Then, a sound that made my blood freeze in my veins. The screeching, discordant wail of the emergency alert system. E. It wasn't coming from the store speakers. It was coming from my pocket. My phone. I scrambled to grab it, fumbling with the device to silence it before the sound gave me away. The screen lit up the darkness under the counter with a harsh, white glow. Emergency alert. Amber alert. Texas Region 4. Silver Honda Odyssey. Plate. KLP 559. Child abduction in progress. Suspect is considered armed and dangerous. I stared at the screen, my breath catching in a ragged sob. The letters swam before my eyes. A silver Honda Odyssey. I could hear the engine idling just 20 feet away, through the glass and the brick. Then, I heard the voice. It was faint, muffled by the car doors and the heavy store walls, but in the oppressive silence of the desert night, it was unmistakable. Daddy. A little girl. Daddy, why won't you look at me? My stomach twisted into a knot of pure nausea. Daddy, I want to go home. Please. I bit my knuckle to keep from screaming. It's a trick. It has to be a trick. The list said ignore them. The list said they are not who they say they are. But the Amber Alert. It was on my phone. That meant it was real, right? The signal had come from the towers. From the real world. From outside this hell. Daddy, please. The girl's voice rose to a terrified shriek. Your face. Where is your face? Then, the sound of a heavy sliding door rolling open. Were thunk. Footsteps. Small ones. Running across the concrete toward the store. Help. Help me. She was running to the door. To me. I looked at the rule again in my mind. They can smell fear, but they can't see through the counter. But it didn't say anything about a kid. It didn't say anything about an Amber Alert. If I stayed down, and that was a real kid out there with a monster, that wasn't just a rule break. That was losing my soul. I gripped the edge of the counter. My sweat made the laminate slippery. Don't peek. Don't peek. Don't peek. Please. He's coming. She slammed against the glass doors. Thud. Thud. I couldn't do it. I couldn't just sit there. I'm a human being. I slowly, agonizingly, lifted my head. Just an inch. Just enough to clear the rim of the counter. Just enough to check the license plate. If the plate matched, I'd grab the gun. I'd break every rule to save her. I peered over the edge. I looked at the pumps. The minivan was there. Pump 6. I squinted at the license plate. KLP 559. It matched. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. It was real. I shifted my gaze to the door, ready to hit the buzzer. There was no little girl. The space in front of the doors was empty. No handprints on the glass. No condensation from breath. My blood went cold. I looked back at the minivan. The driver's seat was empty. Do not peek. A hot, humid breath washed over the back of my neck. It smelled of raw meat and baby powder. I froze. My muscles locked up tight. I was still looking over the counter, staring at the empty van, but the presence was behind me, inside the kiosk. "Found you," a voice whispered. It wasn't a voice. It was the wet sound of skin sliding against skin. I didn't turn around. I didn't verify. I just reacted. I vaulted over the counter. I threw myself over the laminate top, scattering displays of chewing gum and lighter fluid. I hit the hard tile of the sales floor and scrambled to my feet, my sneakers slipping on the polished surface. I risked a single glance back. Standing behind the register, right where I had been crouching, was the man in the blue polo shirt. He was tall, too tall. His head brushed the suspended ceiling tiles. And his face. It wasn't smooth anymore. The skin had split open vertically, from forehead to chin, revealing a wet, red maw filled with rows of needle-thin teeth that pulsated with every breath. He didn't have eyes, but the split in his face turned toward me. "Peekaboo," the maw gurgled. I ran. I didn't run for the front door. Rule 1, keep it locked, and he was blocking the path. I didn't run for the bathroom. Rule 5, the mirror. I ran for the back. Past the sodas, past the chips, toward the employee's only door that led to the stockroom and the rear exit. I hit the crash bar on the stockroom door with my shoulder, bursting through. Darkness. The stockroom wasn't lit. I fumbled for my flashlight, but my belt was empty. I had left it on the counter when I vaulted. Stupid, stupid, stupid. I could hear him behind me. He wasn't running. He was walking. A heavy, wet slap of bare feet on tile. Slap, slap, slap. I felt my way along the wall, my hands brushing against cardboard boxes and metal shelving. I needed the back door. I needed to get out. Rule 9, I gasped, the air burning in my lungs. Dawn breaks at 6:13. Do not leave before the sun. It was 3:20 a.m. If I went out there, into the dark, I was dead. If I stayed in here, with the faceless man, I was dead. I chose the dark. My fingers found the cold steel of the rear exit handle. I shoved it down. Locked. Of course it was locked. I fumbled with the deadbolt. It was rusted, stuck tight. "Alex." The voice came from the doorway I had just run through. He was in the room with me. "You broke the rule, Alex. You peeked." I wrenched the deadbolt with both hands, screaming with effort. It groaned, metal grinding on metal. "The penalty for peeking," the wet voice burbled, closer now, "is removal of the eyes. You weren't using them correctly anyway." I kicked the door. Hard. Crack. The rusted frame gave way. The door swung open into the night. The wind hit me instantly. It wasn't just wind. It was a physical force, a wall of howling dust and freezing air that smelled of ozone and ancient decay. I stumbled out onto the cracked pavement behind the station. I was outside. The darkness was absolute. The perimeter lights were off. I had turned them off for the coyote. I was blind. I took a step forward, and my foot landed on something soft. Something that squelched. The ground wasn't asphalt. It felt like flesh. I looked up. There were no stars. No moon. The sky was a ceiling. A massive, rocky ceiling miles above my head. I wasn't outside. I was somewhere else. I turned around to run back inside, back to the light, back to the faceless man. Even he was better than this. But the door was gone. Where the metal door had been, there was just a smooth, solid wall of brick. I was trapped. 3:22 a.m. I stood there, shivering in the impossible cold, pressing my back against the brick wall that used to be a door. And then, in the distance, in the crushing dark, I saw a light. Not a flashlight. Not a car. A campfire. It was miles away, a tiny pinprick of orange in the void. And I heard drums. Boom. 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 I remembered rule number 2. The Native Americans in this area talk about skinwalkers. We call them the travelers. I looked at my phone. No signal. The amber alert was gone. The screen just displayed a single, flashing message in red text. You left the safe zone. Current objective, survive until dawn. Time to sunrise, 2 hours, 51 minutes. I slid down the wall, burying my face in my knees, clutching the laptop to my chest like a shield. I'm typing this now. The battery is at 12%. I don't know how I have internet. I don't know how you're reading this. Maybe you aren't. Maybe I'm just typing into the void. But if you are reading this, if anyone is out there, don't look for the last stop. And if you see a silver minivan with license plate KLP 559, don't look at the driver. God, whatever you do, don't look at the driver. The drums are getting louder. I have to move. It shrilled. It wasn't a digital chirp. It was a mechanical, physical hammer-on bell violence that seemed to vibrate the very fillings in my teeth. In the confined space of the closet, the sound was deafening, bouncing off the jugs of blue liquid and the metal shelving until my skull felt like it was splitting. Rule number 2. If it rings, answer it immediately. I dropped the flashlight. It rolled across the linoleum, the beam spinning wildly, illuminating dust motes that looked suspiciously like tiny, writhing insects. I scrambled on my knees, my fingers fumbling over the slick, cold plastic of the handset. It felt greasy, coated in a microscopic film of something that wasn't quite oil and wasn't quite sweat. I snatched it up and pressed it to my ear. "Last stop," I croaked, my voice cracking. "This is Alex. Do not speak first." The thought hit me a millisecond too late. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted copper. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for a scream, a static blast, or the wet sound of the thing outside breaking down the door. Silence. No, not silence. Breathing. It was faint, sounding like it was coming from the bottom of a very deep well, or perhaps through a long plastic tube. In, out, in, out. I held my own breath, counting the rhythm. It was slow, deliberate, almost hypnotic. In, out, rhythmic. "I need to speak to the supervisor," I whispered, the words trembling out of me. The breathing stopped. There was a click, followed by a rush of white noise that sounded like wind howling over a desolate prairie. Then, a voice. It was androgynous, flat, and perfectly synthesized. It sounded like a GPS navigation system that had learned to hate. "Employee 449, the voice said. "Telemetry indicates you are in the containment unit. This is a violation of productivity protocols. The sales floor is unattended." "There was a breach," I stammered, staring at the door. "Something in the vents. Rule 6. The ventilation system is functioning within acceptable parameters," the voice droned, ignoring me completely. "There is a buildup of ectoplasmic residue on pump number 2. A customer is approaching at 114 anti-meridium. If the shelves are not stocked, your pay will be docked. If the floor is not clean, your life expectancy will be adjusted. Return to your post. Alex. The glass protects the asset. You are the asset." "Is it safe?" I asked, hating how small I sounded. Safety is a relative construct. Efficiency is absolute. You have 10 seconds to return to the register before the closet is purged. 9, 8. Purged. I didn't wait to ask what that meant. I slammed the receiver back onto the cradle. The red phone sat there, silent and innocent, looking like a toy. I grabbed my flashlight and stood up. My legs felt like jelly. I looked at the box of box cutters on the shelf, Rule 4, and quickly checked my hands. 10 fingers. No more, no less. My shadow on the wall mimicked my movements perfectly. I was still me. I was still anchored. I reached for the deadbolt. The wood of the door was cold. I threw it open and stumbled out into the hallway. The store was silent. The heavy, wet breathing from the ceiling was gone. The slime that had dripped onto the counter had solidified into a black, crusty scar on the laminate, smelling faintly of burnt hair and licorice. I walked back to the counter, my sneakers squeaking loudly. Too loudly. The atmosphere of the store had shifted. Before, it had just been a creepy gas station. Now, it felt stretched. The aisles seemed longer than they should be. The ceiling seemed higher, the fluorescent lights buzzing at a frequency that made my teeth itch. The air tasted stale, recycled, like the air inside an airplane that has been flying for 100 years. I stepped behind the plexiglass partition, and for the first time, I felt a wave of gratitude for the barrier. It wasn't just plastic, it felt like a shield, a fishbowl in an ocean of sharks. I checked the clock. 1:13 a.m. Rule number 3. There is a man who comes in around 1:15 a.m. I looked out the front window. The darkness outside was absolute. The floodlights over the pumps created a cone of harsh, yellow illumination, but beyond that, the world simply ceased to exist. It didn't fade into the distance, it just stopped at the edge of the light, a wall of obsidian void. Then, headlights. They didn't approach from down the road. They simply appeared at the edge of the darkness, two yellow eyes blinking open in the night. An old sedan, boxy and rusted, rolled silently under the canopy. The engine wasn't running. It was coasting, yet it moved with deliberate speed. It stopped at pump 4. The driver's side door groaned open. A man stepped out. He was tall, gaunt, wearing a tan trench coat that looked damp. He wore a wide-brimmed fedora pulled low. He didn't look at the pump. He didn't look at the car. He turned and walked straight toward the glass doors. His gait was wrong. He didn't bob up and down when he walked. He slid forward, his upper body perfectly still, as if he were on a conveyor belt. The automatic chime of the door dinged. Bing bong. The sound was cheerful and completely out of place. The man walked to the counter. Up close, the wrongness intensified. His skin was the color of old parchment. I couldn't see his eyes under the brim of the hat, just the sharp angle of a nose and a mouth that was a tight, colorless line. He smelled like ozone and wet dog. He didn't speak. He just stood there, vibrating slightly. I swallowed hard. "Can I help you?" He didn't look up. He reached into his coat pocket with a hand that had knuckles the size of walnuts. He placed a crumpled $5 bill on the counter. The bill was old, a silver certificate from the 1930s. "Marlboro Reds," he rasped. His voice sounded like two stones grinding together. "Soft pack." My heart hammered against my ribs. Rule number 3. We do not sell cigarettes. "I'm sorry," I said, keeping my voice steady, gripping the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. "We are out of stock." The man went perfectly still. The vibration stopped. "I see them," he said. He didn't point, but I knew he was referring to the rack behind me. It was full. Marlboro Reds, right at eye level. "Those are display only," I lied. "Empty boxes. Shipment comes in tomorrow." The man slowly lifted his head. There were no eyes, just smooth, uninterrupted skin where sockets should have been. But he was seeing me. I could feel the weight of his gaze, heavy and physical, like a hand pressing on my chest. "You are lying to me, Alex," he hissed. He knew my name. Of course he knew my name. "I'm not," I said. "We don't sell tobacco to. Strictly cash only. I mean, we are out." I was babbling. His hand shot out, slamming against the plexiglass. Thud. The heavy plastic shuddered. Dust fell from the ceiling tiles. "Give me the Reds," he roared, his mouth opening impossibly wide, revealing rows of black, rotting gums. "No." I shouted back, stepping away from the glass. He slammed his fist again. Thud. A spiderweb fracture appeared in the center of the partition. "I need a smoke," he screamed. It wasn't a human scream. It was the sound of tearing metal. "Give me a light. Give me the fire." Rule number 3. If you sell him tobacco, he will ask for a light. You do not want to be within reaching distance when he lights up. I backed up until I hit the cigarette rack. I grabbed the box cutter from my pocket, sliding the blade out with a trembling thumb. "Get out." I yelled. "We are closed. Get out." The man froze. His mouth snapped shut with an audible click. He tilted his head to the side, like a curious bird. The anger evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold, clinical curiosity. "Closed," he whispered. "But the light is on. The beacon is lit. We are all drawn to the beacon." He slowly lowered his hand from the glass. He smoothed the front of his trench coat. "Very well," he said, his voice returning to that dry, grinding rasp. "I will go elsewhere. The void is long, and I am very tired." He turned around, executing a perfect 180-degree pivot without moving his feet. He slid back toward the door. "Keep the change," he called out over his shoulder. He walked out into the night, got into his rusted sedan, and the car rolled backward into the darkness, vanishing the moment it left the pool of light. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding, my legs giving out. I slid down the front of the cigarette rack, sitting on the dirty floor, gasping for air. The $5 bill was still on the counter. I reached up and grabbed it. It felt brittle. As I held it, the paper turned to grey ash in my hand, disintegrating into a fine powder that smelled of sulfur. I looked at the clock. 1:22 a.m. 4.5 hours to go. I needed water. My throat felt like I'd swallowed a handful of sand. I pulled myself up and walked toward the back of the store, toward the employee break room and the bathroom. The silence was back, but it was heavier now. It felt expectant. I pushed open the bathroom door. The fluorescent light flickered, buzzing like an angry hornet. The room was tiled in sickly green ceramic. A sink, a toilet, a paper towel dispenser, and the mirror. Rule number 5. Do not look into the mirror in the bathroom after 2 a.m. I checked my phone. 1:25 a.m. I was safe. It wasn't 2 a.m. yet. I turned the tap on. The water came out brown at first, then cleared. I splashed it on my face, the cold shock helping to ground me. I reached for a paper towel, drying my eyes. Then, I made a mistake. I glanced up. It was 1:26 a.m. I was technically safe, but as my eyes met my own reflection, something was wrong. My reflection was delayed. I blinked. In the mirror, my eyes stayed open for a half-second longer, then blinked. I froze. I slowly raised my hand. In the mirror, my reflection just stared at me. It didn't raise its hand. It stood perfectly still, a look of profound sadness on its face. Then, my reflection mouthed a single word. Run. I spun around, backing out of the bathroom so fast I tripped over my own feet. I slammed the door shut and backed away, my heart racing. Trust the list, I muttered to myself. Trust the list. Don't look at the mirror, even if it's early. Just don't look. I returned to the sanctuary behind the glass. The air in the store was getting colder again. The hum of the refrigerators seemed to be speaking a language now, a low, modulated chanting. Zoom, 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 thrum, thrum. I tried to focus on the tasks. Stock the shelves. No, stay behind the glass. The old man said stock when it's quiet. Is this quiet? The phone on the wall, not the red one, the store phone, began to ring. Rule number 4. If the phone rings, answer it. If there is static, hang up. I picked it up. Last stop. Static. Sharp, aggressive white noise. I hung up. It rang again immediately. I picked it up. Last stop. 7, a voice said. It was a woman's voice. Melodic. Cheerful. 19. 44. Void. Blue. Ascend. Rule number 4. If there is a voice reading a list of numbers, write them down and put the paper in the safe. I grabbed a pen and a receipt slip. Can you repeat that? I asked, my hand hovering over the paper. 7, the voice repeated, sounding delighted that I was participating. 19. 44. Void. Blue. Ascend. Do not let the fire go out, Alex. The fire keeps them warm. Is that all? I asked. No, she giggled. It was a terrible sound, like glass breaking in a nursery. Look outside, silly. The line went dead. I slowly put the phone down. I wrote the numbers on the slip of paper. 7 to 19, 44, void, blue, ascend. I opened the safe, 000, and shoved the paper inside, next to the gun. Then, I looked outside. At first, I saw nothing but the pumps and the desolate concrete. But then, movement caught my eye near the air compressor at the edge of the lot. A coyote. It was massive, its fur matted and mangy, standing under the weak halo of the perimeter light. It was tearing at something on the ground. Maybe a rabbit, maybe a rapper. Rule number 2. If you see a coyote standing on its hind legs, it was on all fours. Just a dog. Just a wild animal scavenging for food. I watched it, feeling a weird sense of relief. Nature. Something real. Then, the coyote stopped chewing. It slowly lifted its head and looked directly at the window. Its eyes flashed green in the light. It sat up. Then it stood up. It didn't just rear up on its hind legs like a begging dog. It unfolded. Its rear legs lengthened, the joints cracking audibly even through the glass. Its spine straightened, elongating into a grotesque parody of a human posture. Its front paws hung limp at its sides, the claws clicking together. It stood there, nearly 7 feet tall, balancing awkwardly on legs that weren't designed for bipedalism. It looked like a person wearing a very bad, very rotting fursuit. It raised one paw and pointed at the pumps. Then, with a lurching, stumbling gait, it began to walk toward the building. Turn off the outside lights immediately. I scrambled for the breaker panel under the counter. The switches were labeled with fading tape. Pumps. Sign. Perimeter. My fingers shook as I flipped the perimeter switch, creating darkness to stay safe. It felt counterintuitive. It felt like suicide. The outer ring of lights died, plunging the edge of the lot into shadow. The creature vanished into the gloom. I waited. My hand hovered over the pump light switch. Do not make eye contact. Just wait until it leaves. I crouched below the counter, huddling in the gap between the cigarette shelving and the register. I could hear footsteps outside. Not the click of claws on pavement, but the heavy, slapping sound of bare feet. Slap, slap, slap. It was circling the building, testing the perimeter. I held my breath, squeezing my eyes shut. I recited my social security number backward in my head. 984. Something tapped on the glass, right above my head. Gentle, inquisitive. Tap tap. Then a voice, muffled by the thick plexiglass. It sounded like my voice. It sounded exactly like me, recorded and played back on a warp tape. Hey, buddy, can you open up? I forgot my keys. It's cold out here. Come on, Alex. Let me in. I'm just you. I clamped my hands over my ears. Open the door, Alex. We have customers. We need to stock the shelves. We need to feed the fire. I didn't move. I sat there for what felt like hours, curled into a ball, until the voice faded into a low, wet growl and the footsteps slapped away into the desert night. When I finally gathered the courage to stand up, the clock read 2:15 a.m. The witching hour was approaching, the deepest part of the night. I stood up and looked around the store. It looked normal. The sodas were in straight lines. The floor was clean. But the feeling of being watched was intense. It wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was coming from the inanimate objects. The slushy machine churned slowly, the red liquid swirling in a vortex that looked too deep. The coffee pot hissed on the burner, the dark liquid bubbling like tar. The rows of candy bars seemed to lean forward on their shelves. And then I felt it. A vibration in the floor. A low rumble that started in the soles of my feet and worked its way up my spine. A car was coming, but not a normal car. The rumbling grew louder, shaking the display racks. Dust rained down from the ceiling tiles. A black semi-truck pulled into the lot. It was massive, bigger than any truck should be. It had no trailer, just the cab, chrome gleaming under the flickering canopy lights. The windows were tinted so dark they looked like black holes. There were no license plates, no logos, just sleek, black metal. It idled by the diesel pumps. The engine noise was a deep, infrasonic thrum that made my vision blur. The driver's door didn't open. The passenger door didn't open. Instead, the window rolled down 3 inches. A hand extended from the gap. It was wearing a pristine white glove. It held a single, gold coin. It dropped the coin onto the concrete. Clink. Then, the window rolled up. The truck revved its engine, a sound like a dying whale, and peeled out, accelerating with impossible speed, vanishing into the night in seconds. I stared at the gold coin sitting on the oil-stained concrete. I looked at the notes. There was no rule about gold coins. There was no rule about black trucks. I looked at the emergency containment procedures list again. Rule 5, the customer in the suit. No. Rule 2, the red phone. No. I was in uncharted territory. I debated going out to get it. $50 an hour was great, but gold? That could be worth thousands. It was sitting right there, 10 feet from the door. Greed. That's how they get you. Desperation. I remembered my own words from the start of this night. I stayed behind the glass. Not today, I whispered. I'm not falling for it. As if hearing me, the gold coin began to melt. It liquefied, turning into a puddle of bubbling yellow sludge that hissed and smoked, eating a hole straight into the concrete. I shuddered. 2:45 a.m. I was tired. My eyes felt like they were filled with sand. The adrenaline crash was hitting hard. I sat on the stool behind the register, my head heavy. Just close your eyes for a second. Just a blink. I let my eyelids droop. Crash. The sound of shattering glass exploded from the back of the store. I jumped up, grabbing the box cutter. The sound had come from the cooler section, the beer cave. I peered around the partition. The glass door to the walk-in beer cave was shattered. Glass shards covered the floor, but nothing had thrown a brick. The breakage had come from the inside. Something had broken out of the beer cooler. The temperature in the store plummeted. I could see my breath again. I scanned the aisles. Nothing. Then I heard it. The sound of wet footsteps. Squelch. Squelch. But they weren't on the floor. They were on the ceiling. I slowly looked up. Clinging to the acoustic tiles, defying gravity, was a man. He was wearing the last stop uniform, a red vest and a name tag. He was pale, his skin grey and slack. His eyes were missing. His mouth was sewn shut with copper wire. He was crawling across the ceiling tiles like a gecko, his limbs moving with unnatural, jerky speed. He stopped directly above the aisle of chips. He rotated his head 180 degrees to look at me with his empty sockets. I looked at my flashlight. Rule number 6. They hang from the rafters when it's dark, but the lights are on. I screamed at him. The lights are on. The thing on the ceiling tilted its head. And then, with a synchronized click, every light in the store went out. Total darkness. Rule number 6. The generator takes exactly 60 seconds to kick in. I fumbled for the flashlight on my belt, my fingers numb with terror. I clicked it on. Shine it directly at the floor. Do not look up. I pointed the beam at the linoleum. I could hear the thing above me. It let out a sound, a muffled, high-pitched whimper through its sewn-shut mouth. I could hear the rustle of fabric as it dropped from a ceiling. Thump. It landed in the aisle, 10 feet away. I stared at the circle of light on the floor. I saw a pair of black work boots step into the beam. 1. I counted out loud, my voice shaking. 2. 3. I had to survive 57 more seconds. The boots took a step closer. 4. 5. I could smell it now. Formaldehyde and stale beer. The boots stopped. They were right at the edge of the counter. I kept the light on the floor. I squeezed my eyes shut, refusing to look up, refusing to see the face of the previous clerk, refusing to see what they had done to him. 6. 7. Something wet dripped onto my hand holding the light. 8. Help, me. The voice was wet, tearing through the stitches. 9. Please, it burns. 10. I started screaming the numbers, drowning him out. 11. 12. 13. I heard the heavy screech of metal on metal. The sound of the register drawer opening? No, the sound of the safe? I cracked one eye open, keeping the beam down. The boots were gone. The generator roared to life. The lights flickered, buzzed, and slammed back on, bathing the store in harsh, clinical brightness. I looked up. The aisle was empty. The shattered glass from the beer cave was gone. The door was intact. I looked at my hand. There was a single drop of dark, viscous blood on my knuckle. I wiped it off on my jeans. 3:05 a.m. I had survived the first half of the shift. I slumped against the counter, laughing hysterically. It was a broken, jagged sound. Okay, I choked out. Okay, what's next? Bring it on. What's next? As if in answer, the front door opened. A man in a pristine charcoal suit walked in. He didn't have a face, just a smooth patch of skin. He didn't have a shadow. He glided to the counter, phasing right through the locked door as if it were mist. He placed a briefcase on the counter. He opened it. Inside was a contract, glowing with faint red light. "Mr. Alex," the man said, his voice resonating directly inside my brain without sound. "I understand you are having a difficult night. I am here to offer a settlement. Rule number 5, emergency list." The customer in the suit. I stared at the contract. The letters swirled, promising rest, promising silence, promising zero balance on my student loans. I looked at the man's smooth, featureless face. "I am currently on the clock," I said, my voice dead and hollow. The man paused. He seemed to sigh, though he had no mouth. He closed the briefcase with a sharp snap. "Understood," the voice in my head said. "Compliance is noted. We will renegotiate at dawn." He turned and walked back through the glass, fading away before he reached the pumps. I looked at the laptop. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely type. 3:15 a.m. The silence is back, but it's different now. The store feels hungry. I'm going to keep writing. It keeps me anchored. If I stop writing, I think I might start listening to the humming of the fridge. And if I listen to the humming, I think I might understand what it's saying. And I really don't want to know what the refrigerator is saying. I push myself away from the brick wall, my sneakers sliding on the slick, uneven terrain. Every step was a nightmare. The ground gave way slightly under my weight, like walking on a rotting mattress soaked in water. I tried not to look down. I tried not to think about the squelching sound, or the way the soil seemed to bruise purple where I stepped. I aimed for a cluster of jagged silhouettes about 50 yards away. They looked like boulders, or maybe dead trees. Cover. I just needed cover. The drums were rhythmic now. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. A heartbeat. Not mine. The world's. I scrambled over a ridge of what felt disturbingly like cartilage and threw myself behind the largest shape. Up close, it wasn't a rock. It was a massive, calcified rib bone, bleached white and protruding from the dark earth at a 45-degree angle. It was easily 10 feet tall. I pressed my back against the cold, porous surface, pulling my knees to my chest. I covered the laptop's power light with a piece of duct tape I found stuck to the bottom of the case. I dimmed the screen to the lowest setting, creating a tiny, private bubble of dim grey light in the overwhelming void. 3:35 a.m. I held my breath. The drums stopped. The silence that followed was worse. The drums had covered the other sounds. Now, without the percussion, I could hear the ecosystem of this place. I heard the wet rustle of things moving in the dark, the distant sound of wind whistling through hollow spaces, and, terrifyingly close, the sound of sniffing. It was a wet, congested sniff, deep inhalations, followed by a sharp, clicking exhalation. Sniff. Click, click, click. Sniff. Click, click, click. It was coming from the direction of the brick wall I had just left. It had found my scent. I squeezed my eyes shut. Rule number 7. They can smell fear. Okay, I whispered inside my mind, forcing my brain to latch onto logic, onto math, onto anything that wasn't the monster 20 yards away. Fear is cortisol. Fear is adrenaline. Pheromones. Control the heart rate. Control the sweat. I started reciting the periodic table in my head. Hydrogen. Helium. Lithium. Beryllium. The footsteps drew closer. They didn't sound like the heavy, slapping feet of the Faceless Man. These were light. Scuttling. Too many legs moving too fast. Boron. Carbon. Nitrogen. Something scrambled up the side of the rib bone I was hiding behind. I felt the vibration through the calcium. Dust and flakes of bone rained down on my shoulder. I clamped my hand over my mouth. I bit down on the meat of my palm until I tasted blood. Do not scream. Do not breathe. The thing was perched directly above me. I could hear its joints popping. I could hear a low, rattling wheeze. Then it spoke. Alex. It wasn't the little girl's voice. It wasn't my voice. It was my mother's voice. It sounded exactly like her. The same inflection she used when I forgot to take the trash out. The same tone of disappointed concern. Alex, honey? Are you hiding? You know I don't like it when you hide. Come out, sweetie. I brought you some soup. It's cold out here. Tears pricked my eyes. My mom lives in Ohio. She's asleep right now. She's safe. This isn't her. Alex, the thing above me crooned, the voice shifting, warping. It dropped an octave, becoming guttural and distorted. The bank called. Alex, your account is overdrawn. You need to work a double shift. Come back to the register. It was cycling through my anxieties. It was fishing. I didn't move. I didn't swallow. My lungs burned for air, but I held the deadlock. The creature shifted its weight. A long, thin limb drifted down from the top of the bone pillar, hanging in the air just inches from my face. It wasn't a hand. It was a claw, blackened and twisted, with 3 joints too many. It grasped blindly at the air, twitching, searching. I stared at it, wide-eyed, watching a drop of thick, yellow saliva slide down the forearm and drip onto the ground between my feet. The ground hissed where it landed. "Boring," the voice whispered. It sounded like the old man now, the one who hired me. "The new guy is boring. No fight. No flavor." With a sudden, violent spasm, the creature launched itself off the pillar. I felt the wind of its movement, a rush of rotting fur and copper. It landed hard on the fleshy ground a few yards away and chattered, a sound like rocks grinding in a blender, before scuttling off into the darkness toward the distant campfire. I let out the air in my lungs in a shaky, silent shudder. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. I checked the phone. 3:55 a.m. Time to sunrise. 2 hours, 18 minutes. I couldn't stay here. The rib bone offered visual cover, but if they were hunting by scent, it was only a matter of time before a pack arrived. I needed a destination. I peered around the edge of the bone. I looked past the campfire, scanning the impossible horizon. And then I saw it, way up high, maybe half a mile up, hanging in the sky like a star. The neon sign. As station. It was flickering. It looked tiny from here, like a toy. I realized then the geometry of where I was. I wasn't in a different dimension, exactly. I was underneath. The gas station, the real world, was up there. I had fallen through the cracks of reality into the crawl space of the universe. The backyard wasn't a yard, it was a pit. And if the sign was up there, there had to be a way up. I squinted. Below the floating neon sign, faint but visible, was a structure. A lattice of metal beams and stairs, climbing up the side of a massive, dark cliff face that marked the edge of this fleshy plain. It looked like a fire escape, or a service ladder. It was miles away, a trek across open, hostile ground. But it was a way out. I tightened my grip on the laptop. I checked my pocket for the box cutter. It was still there. I took a deep breath of the foul air. "Okay," I whispered. "Run the gauntlet." I'm moving now. I'm moving between the bone spires, keeping low. The ground is getting harder here, more like scabbed skin than fresh meat. It makes less noise. But the drums have started again. And this time, they aren't coming from one direction. They're coming from everywhere. If I make it to the ladder, I'll update. If the text cuts off mid-sentence, you know what happened. I see a shape ahead. Not a monster. A structure. A small, wooden shack sitting alone in the middle of the wasteland. It looks like an outhouse or a toll booth. There is a light on inside. I have to check it. I need a weapon. I need high ground. I'm getting closer. There's a sign on the door. It's hand-painted. Lost and found. We have your eyes. Come claim them. I'm not going in there. I'm going around. Wait. The door of the shack is opening. A hand is waving a white flag. A handkerchief. Pest. A loud hiss from the shack. "Hey, kid, over here." It's a man. He's wearing a tattered mechanic's jumpsuit. He looks solid. He has a face. He looks terrified. "Get in here," he hisses, gesturing frantically. The harvesters are sweeping the field. You have 30 seconds before the fog rolls in. I look at the horizon. He's right. A wall of thick, green fog is moving across the plain, swallowing the bone trees. Inside the fog, I can see silhouettes. Tall ones. Hundreds of them. I have to trust him. I have no choice. I'm running for the shack. I'm inside. He slammed the door and threw a heavy iron bolt. The room is tiny. Just a table, a lantern, and walls covered in maps. The man is panting, leaning against the door. He looks at me. He has oil stains on his cheeks. "You're the new night clerk," he says. It's not a question. "Yeah," I gasp. "Who are you?" He grimaces, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I'm the guy who worked the shift before you," he says. "I'm the guy who wrote the note." He points to a shotgun leaning against the table. "And we have a lot of work to do if we want to kill the sun." "Kill the sun?" I ask. I thought the rule was wait for the sun. He laughs. It's a broken, hopeless sound. "Kid," he says, staring into the flame of the lantern. "Down here, The sun doesn't rise. It hatches. He grabs a map off the wall and slams it onto the table. You want to survive till 6:13 a.m.? We have to stop it from rising. Because if that thing cracks the horizon. He looks me dead in the eye. It doesn't just end your shift. It ends the world. The green fog hits the shack. The wood groans. Something massive scrapes against the roof. Grab the gun, he says. We are going hunting. I grabbed the shotgun. It was heavy, the wood stock worn smooth by sweaty palms, the metal barrel pitted with rust. I pumped the action, shuck-clack, and the sound was satisfyingly loud in the cramped shack. It's loaded with rock salt and iron filings, the mechanic said, kicking the table over to block the door as the wood began to splinter under the pressure of the fog outside. It won't kill them, but it stings enough to make them flinch. That's all the time we get. A flinch. He grabbed the lantern and a jagged metal spike from the floor. The ladder is half a mile east, he shouted over the groaning of the timber. The sun is incubating in the west crater. When I open this door, you run. You don't look back at me. You don't stop to admire the view. You run for the ladder. What about you? I asked, my grip tightening on the gun. He looked at me, and for a second, the frantic energy left his face, replaced by a hollow, ancient exhaustion. He pulled up the sleeve of his jumpsuit. His arm wasn't skin. It was bark. Grey, calcified scale that looked like the bone trees outside. I've been down here too long, Alex, he said softly. I'm part of the ecosystem now. If I go up, I turn to dust. But you're still fresh meat. The roof of the shack tore open. A massive, spindly hand, blacker than the dark, with fingers like scythes, reached in, grasping for the light. Geo, the mechanic screamed. He hurled the lantern at the creature's face. The glass shattered, and fire, real, honest fire, erupted against the thing's skin. It shrieked, a sound like tearing metal, and recoiled. The mechanic charged out into the green fog, swinging the metal spike, screaming a war cry that sounded more like a sob. I didn't watch him die. I followed the rules. I ran. I burst out of the shack and turned east, sprinting toward the faint outline of the metal lattice climbing the cliff face. The fog was freezing. It clung to my clothes, wet and heavy, smelling of sulfur and old blood. Shadows moved in the mist. Tall, gangly silhouettes that strode on legs like stilts. Boom, boom, boom. The drums were deafening now. The ground shook with every beat, throwing me off balance. I saw a shape loom out of the fog to my left, a harvester. It was 20 feet tall, its body a cage of ribs, its head a featureless oval of bone. It swung a long, pendulum arm at me. I raised the shotgun. Boom. The recoil bruised my shoulder. The spray of salt and iron hit the creature in the knee joint. It didn't roar. It hissed like a punctured tire and buckled, crashing into the soft earth. I scrambled past it, my lungs burning. Ahead, the horizon began to glow. It wasn't the warm orange of a sunrise. It was a sickly, pulsating violet. The light didn't cast shadows. It seemed to eat them. The sun was crowning. A massive, gelatinous membrane breached the jagged line of the crater rim, stretching and throbbing. Inside the membrane, something huge was uncoiling. A silhouette of wings? Arms? Tentacles? I couldn't tell, and I didn't want to know. Stop it from rising, the mechanic had said. I was just a clerk. I couldn't kill a celestial god. I could only clock out. The cliff face loomed ahead. The ladder, rusted, shaking, bolted into the rock, dangled just out of reach, maybe 8 feet off the ground. Behind me, the fog swirled. A dozen harvesters broke through the mist, moving with terrifying speed. I threw the shotgun at them, a useless gesture, but it bought me a fraction of a second as they flinched. I jumped. My fingers brushed the bottom rung. Cold, wet iron. I scrambled for purchase, my sneakers scraping against the rock wall. I caught the rung with my right hand, then my left. I pulled myself up, swinging my legs over the bottom bar just as a harvester's claw slammed into the rock where my torso had been a second ago. I climbed. I climbed until my muscles screamed. I climbed until the air grew thin and the smell of rot faded, replaced by the smell of ozone and diesel. Below me, the violet light intensified. A low, resonant hum began to vibrate the ladder, the cliff, my very teeth. Crack, The sound of the membrane bursting. I made the mistake. I looked down. The sun had hatched. It wasn't a star. It was an eye. A single, colossal eye, miles wide, floating up from the crater. It was irisless, a swirling vortex of purple and black, and it was looking up. It was looking at the bottom of the real world. It let out a sound. Not a roar, but a frequency. A psychic scream that tore through my mind. I see you. I squeezed my eyes shut and climbed faster. The heat rising from below was blistering now. My skin felt like it was tight, ready to split. Above me, the ladder ended. It didn't lead to a platform. It just vanished into a ceiling of solid, cracked asphalt. I punched the asphalt. It was hard, cold, real. Let me in. I screamed, pounding on the underside of the gas station parking lot. Let me in. The violet light was getting closer. I could feel the heat on the soles of my shoes. The eye was rising. If it touched the surface, if it broke through. I remembered the box cutter in my pocket. Rule number 4, emergency list: the station cannot process biological anomalies that are not part of its inventory. I wasn't an anomaly. I was an employee. But the box cutter, that was inventory. I jammed the blade into a crack in the asphalt. Stock check. I screamed hysterically. Inventory check. Register 4. The reality of the station rippled. The asphalt softened, turning into a thick, black sludge. I pushed upward. It was like swimming through tar. It filled my nose, my ears. I kicked wildly, my feet burning as the violet light licked at my heels. And then, I broke the surface. I gasped, sucking in air that tasted of gasoline and dust. I dragged myself out of the hole. I rolled onto the cool concrete of the parking lot. I lay there for a second, staring up. The sky was blue. Pale, early morning blue. There were clouds. Normal, fluffy clouds. I scrambled to my knees and looked at the hole I had crawled out of. It was gone. There was just a fresh patch of asphalt, slightly darker than the rest, steaming faintly in the morning air. I checked my phone. It was shattered, but the screen flickered to life. 6:14 a.m. The sun, the real, yellow, beautiful sun, was just peeking over the horizon in the east. I started to laugh. I couldn't help it. I sat in the middle of the desolate parking lot, covered in black slime and blood, laughing until I choked. I heard the crunch of gravel. I froze. A truck pulled in. A beat-up, rusted pickup. The old man got out. The owner. He walked over to me, his boots crunching on the stones. He looked at the patch of fresh asphalt. He looked at the shattered glass of the front door. He looked at me. He took a long drag from a cigarette that smelled like burning plastic. Rough shift, he grunted. I quit, I wheezed. I quit. I quit. I quit. He nodded slowly. He reached into the duffel bag he was carrying. He pulled out a stack of cash, thick, bound in rubber bands. He tossed it onto my chest. Hazard pay, he said, plus overtime. You sealed the breach. That's worth a bonus. He walked past me toward the store, stepping over the line where the perimeter lights used to be. Wait, I called out, my voice cracking. The guy before me, the mechanic. He's still down there. The old man stopped. He didn't turn around. No, he isn't, he said, his voice low. He clocked out a long time ago. Keep the money, Alex, and drive fast. The darkness remembers your scent. He walked into the store. The bell on the door chimed. Bing bong. I grabbed the money. I didn't count it. I ran to my Civic. The engine turned over on the first try. I peeled out of that lot, leaving rubber on the road, driving west, away from the sunrise, away from the last stop. I drove until the gas tank was empty. Then I walked to this town. I'm in the Motel 6 now. Room 104. I counted the money. $20,000. It's sitting on the bed next to me. It smells like ozone. I've been writing this for 3 hours. I needed to get it down. I needed to make it real. But there's one thing I haven't told you. One thing that's making me shake harder than the memory of the Faceless Man. When I checked into the motel, the clerk, he was a nice guy. Young. Name tag said Gary. He handed me my key card. "Enjoy your stay, Alex," he said. I hadn't given him my ID yet, and when I went into the bathroom to wash the tar off my face, I looked in the mirror. My reflection delayed again, just for a second. It smiled at me, and then it whispered, clear as day, "See you on the night shift." I'm looking at the door of my motel room. There's a gap underneath it. A shadow just stopped there. It's breathing. If you see a job listing for the last stop gas and grill, don't do it. The pay isn't worth it. And if you're reading this, please, don't look at the shadows in your room, because they're looking at you, and they are very, very hungry.